Welcome to Midlife Unraveled, the podcast that takes you on a journey through the twists and turns of midlife. I'm your host, Anita Gilbert, and I've transitioned from the corporate world of investment banking to become the proud owner of a yoga and Pilates studio. Together, we're going to navigate the exhilarating roller coaster that is midlife. Each episode, we dive deep with a seasoned expert to rediscover and redefine how to live our best during this life-changing period. Join us every Tuesday for new episodes, brimming with wisdom, insights, inspiration, and a laugh along the way. So strap in, because Midlife Unraveled is about to redefine the way you embrace midlife. Subscribe today and take this journey with us. I am so pleased today to be talking to Martine Barclay all about sleep. This is something that I think we all can relate to, the issues and the problems that we've experienced in our sleep. I know myself, I used to sleep very, very well. As soon as midlife hits, it all goes a bit pear-shaped. So I'm so excited to be talking to Martine today. She's a clinical psychotherapist and a counsellor, and she focuses on supporting adults across the lifespan. Her specialty area is sleep, which she approaches from a biopsychosocial perspective, helping clients to sleep well naturally. Martine is master's qualified psychotherapist and counsellor, accredited CBTI practitioner, that's cognitive behavioural therapy for insomnia, and she has successfully completed the fundamentals of sleep medicine from the University of Sydney. Martine is also a member of the Australasian Sleep Association. So I think we can rest in the knowledge that Martine is a very safe pair of hands for all her sleep advice today. So I can't wait to start this conversation. I hope you enjoy. Welcome to Midlife Unraveled.
Thanks, Anita. Thanks for having me.
It's so lovely to have you. And we are talking today about a very, very important topic of sleep. Something that is obviously essential for all of us, and for many of us is just a nightmare.
It's not a problem till you can't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's start generally by looking with a wider lens. Why do we need sleep?
Well, so it's actually quite interesting because the field of sleep in medicine has only been around for about 20 to 25 years because we didn't actually understand the purpose of sleep. And so what we found is actually while we sleep, our brain is rebooting. It's doing all of our memory things. It's consolidating memory. It's doing a bit of a flush through the brain in terms of cleaning it out and getting it ready for the next day. And so the challenge is that when we are, particularly if we're doing night shifts or we're shortening our sleep, our brain doesn't get to finish its process. And the challenge there is that the next night when you go to sleep, it doesn't start where it left off. It starts where it starts, at the beginning again. And so potentially you could have a whole series of unfinished processes that then over time will make you ill.
Right.
Yeah.
And what is it about sleep? Help us to understand. I know you have deep sleep, you have light sleep, you have people talk about REM sleep.
Yep.
What does it all mean?
So what that means is so really you need your deep sleep. Your deep sleep is usually about 20% of your sleep. So if it's not, then you're maybe not getting enough. But essentially you need a cycle of sleep, which for most people can be between 45 minutes and 90 minutes. The cycles of sleep are usually longer when you start, and then they get shorter as you start to wake up. And you'll have to time yourself through one of these apps that you can check and see how long your sleep is, but it's anywhere between 90 and 40 minutes. And generally speaking, your sleep before midnight is worth twice the sleep after midnight.
Why is that?
Because that's when the big processes are taking place for your brain.
So when we tend to go to sleep, so we go to sleep, say whatever time that is, but so it's in that initial phase of the sleep
that's it.
Those processes are happening.
That's right, yeah. And so that's why some people can say to you, I can manage on 5 hours sleep. Yes, you probably could, but it's unsustainable because the other processes in the other 2 hours or 3 hours are not actually getting done.
So what
And
are those
so,
other processes?
well, it's a shorter version of the sleep cycle.
Hmm.
So we do a large sleep cycle in the beginning, and we probably do 3 or 4 of those, and then we go into the shorter sleep cycles. And so if you think of it like the big sleep cycle is like going to the gym and lifting weights, and the smaller sleep cycle is like doing 20 minutes of walking. But they're
Right.
both equally important to be able to have a healthy night's sleep or sleep so that you are refreshed for the next day, but also your body has had the chance to reboot and rejuvenate as well.
What about REM? What is REM?
That's rapid eye movement, and that really just relates to a period of sleep, which is, um, the third phase of sleep or deep sleep. Yeah.
Okay.
And
And what?
so the thing is, with people, sometimes they might sleep for 8 hours, but they may not have the right proportions of the different sleep cycles. And so that's why sleep studies are really important.
So how do we know if we're getting the right cycles of sleep?
You can use a tracker, so an Oura Ring, an Apple Watch. Most of them will give you a sense of what you're doing, and if you look at the proportions, that would be helpful. But really, it's those things are really just to tell you whether you're getting enough sleep and those kinds of things. I tend to say use them for a while to track and then don't look at them again, because really it's only telling you what 7 hours sleep feels like or what 5 hours sleep feels like when you wake up. It's, the logarithms and that in it are not as precise as perhaps a sleep study would be, but it gives you a good sense of what's happening for yourself.
Right. And how much sleep do we actually need?
8 hours.
Is
It's
does
it
it
is
vary
eight
though?
hours. It can vary. Look, there's a very rare condition which maybe 5% of the population have, which they can actually survive on 3 hours sleep, and that's genetic. And so they would
Wow.
have been like that from a long time, and it's very rare. But most people, 99% of the population, need 7 to 8 hours sleep a night to function well the next day. So just to give you a sense, if you are operating machinery or responsible for driving in your job, um, Australian Health and Safety would say if you've had less than 6 hours sleep, you're not able to drive safely.
Wow. Okay, I wasn't
Yeah,
aware of that. Goodness
yeah.
me.
So, and you can't operate big machinery either. So, yeah, I suppose take from that what you will.
Yeah.
And sleep deprivation or micro sleeps are the biggest cause of car accidents.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wow. That's
yeah.
incredible. What about
Mm.
physically? You spoke about mentally what we need.
Yep.
What are the physical processes that take place while we're asleep?
Yeah, so when we look at sleep from a Chinese clock perspective, the body processes different at different times of the night or the 24-hour clock, and so liver time is between 3 and 4, and so that is when the liver is processing most. And if you're eating things that don't align with your body, so for example, gluten, or you're a celiac and you've had something you shouldn't have, or you're drinking alcohol, your body will actually be hotter because of the extra processing your liver needs to do. And so that will wake you up. The body temperature will wake you up. If you haven't had enough hydration during the day, that will wake you up at night as well, usually around between 2 and 3. And if you don't breathe through your nose predominantly or all the time, that will also wake you up between 1 and 4, because your body will be gasping for breath. Because what's happening is you're going into a coma when you sleep, but
Mhm.
you're guaranteed you're going to wake up. And so the body will kind of do what it needs to do during that time.
Right. Okay. So sleep issues genetic.
They can be. So some of it can be genetic, some of it can be role modeled. So if your parents didn't sleep much, or if your parents didn't necessarily have a high value on sleep, then you would have learnt to exist without much,
Mhm.
or less compared to a family where the parents really valued sleep and made sure that the children learnt to sleep and kept sleeping. So some of it is societal, but also some of it can be diet related as well.
Right.
Mm.
So how does diet impact our sleep?
Well, a diet is it impacts if it's an allergy. So if you wake up in the evening roughly between 3 and 4, you can almost be guaranteed that you've eaten something that doesn't agree with your body, that it's hard to process.
Mhm.
So sometimes people, before they get diagnosed with celiac or gluten intolerance, their sleep is really bad. Um, so it can be that. Also, if you have a lot of spicy food for dinner or too much food, it's difficult to go to sleep because the body has to do so much to prepare the body for sleep.
So
Yeah.
is there an ideal time that a gap between having our last meal and going to sleep?
Yeah, it's more than 2 hours,
Mhm.
which is quite hard sometimes for corporate people. By the time they get home, get ready for have their shower, get ready, have dinner, and then go to bed. It's quite a difficult, tight time frame. But yes, anything more than 2 hours is good. Hmm.
Okay. What about
Yeah.
waking times? Some people are very
Mhm.
much morning people. They like to get up at 5 or 5 o'clock
Yeah.
in the morning, get their day started
Yeah.
at 6. Other
Yeah.
people don't function before 8
Yep.
a.m.
Yep.
Is there any impact on your sleep? Or what's the connection between morning
So
waking and sleep?
yeah. So there is no real connection in the sense that some people are more predisposed to wake early. And that's partly because, so when we go to sleep, we have high serotonin, and then the cortisol builds as we sleep. And then what happens is with the light coming into our eyes, even though they're closed, then it will start to wake them up. And so some people have more, so it takes longer for them to wake, and some people have less, so they wake earlier. But that's fine as long as they take care of the amount of sleep that they have for the evening. So often people who start at 5 o'clock in the day, they actually go to bed earlier.
Yeah.
And so they might accommodate it that way. Whereas others who consider themselves what we call owls, where they're more productive at night, prefer to stay awake at night for longer, that's okay. But then they have to make sure that they sleep for a bit longer as well.
Right. Okay. What about
Yeah.
napping? I feel like we have a young generation that's very I don't know, my girls seem to always be napping, so
Yeah, great.
it was frowned upon when I was their age.
Yeah, yeah,
It was
yeah,
the nana nap, but
yeah.
people seem to be quite comfortable with napping now. Is that a positive thing
Yes.
or a negative thing for our evening sleep?
It's a good thing if you feel you need it, because the thing is that if the body is tired, it will sleep and it will take the gap, to do that. And so if you're sleeping less or napping rather 5 hours before your bedtime, that's good because it won't impact your sleep drive or your desire to sleep.
Hmm.
But anything closer to that, it will interfere with your nighttime sleep. And also, if you're going to nap, don't sleep for longer than one sleep cycle. So whether that and that's your short sleep cycle, so 40 minutes, probably roundabout, that's enough time, because otherwise you do start the processes that start taking place, and then you wake up groggy.
Yeah, we've all
And
had those lunchtime naps, I
yeah,
think, in the past where it's just like you can't wake up and you feel like you're
that's
dragging
it.
yourself through treacle to
Yeah,
just wake up.
absolutely. And so that's why I say to people who travel a lot for work, try and arrive in your destination for the morning, so
Right.
that you have
Okay.
a full day of work or a full day of holiday and then go to sleep at night.
And that helps with jet lag.
Yeah, and
Jet lag's
adjusting
a
to a
whole
new
different
time frame.
episode.
It's a whole different, yeah, whole different discussion, but as
It
best you
is.
can.
It
Yeah,
is. And what about
that's it.
shift workers? You touched on that before, but if people are
Yeah.
working nights and maybe not
Mm,
all the time, maybe it's a
mm,
2 or 3 nights on and then they're on
mm.
daytimes, how do they adjust? And is that detrimental to our health?
It's difficult to adjust, and it is detrimental to your health. And because A lack of sleep or poor sleep is responsible for 67% of all preventable diseases. And there are cancers in there and neurological diseases as well as mental health. So, and that's why we see a higher rate of cancer in shift workers and other diseases. But really, for shift workers, you need to keep the same cycle as best you can. So if your work works on a regular shift cycle, then don't try and chop and change because your body will be confused as to where it is.
Right.
The other is if you say, for example, working night times, regulate your dinner when you have dinner. So often what shift working means is that you're actually working roundabout to what nature intended. And so then you might have breakfast at 8 o'clock in the evening because you're going to work, and have your lunch at, 2 o'clock in the morning, and then you'll have a dinner just before you get home or when you get home, so that you're following the food cycle, but you're not following the light cycle, if that makes sense. And then on your days off, you have to also maintain those hours in a similar way. And that's where people come unstuck, because it's really unsociable to work shift hours. And so then they try and have a normal day and the body goes, oh, where am I?
Absolutely.
And so it takes about 2 or 3 days to start regulating from a shift and again to regulate back up to a shift. So you can just imagine what that creates for the body if you do changing it about every week or so.
Yeah. And what about waking up? What are the things I've heard that they advise when you wake up to actually go outside into natural light, if it is light? Is that, what sort of things can we do to help bring ourselves out of that sleep period?
Yeah, so if you're waking up at the right time, whatever that might look like, then yes, get yourself into light, turn the lights on, start moving, start your day. And I even say that to clients who have woken up, if they normally wake up at 6 and for whatever reason they're up at 4:30, I say get up. Don't try and go back to sleep. Get up unless you're confident you're going to get a sleep cycle in before you wake.
Right.
And then if you wake up in the night and you actually want to go back to sleep, then either you can just, so there's some techniques that you can do to go back to sleep in bed, or you can get up, go and do a few things and then come back to bed. But if you've got a sleep partner, sometimes that's not very attractive for the other person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, let's move specifically into sleep in midlife. I want to take menopause kind of out of the mix for now, because I feel like that's a whole, it's a nice big subject that we'll get to shortly. But do our sleep patterns change when we come into those midlife years?
Yeah, they're always changing. So if you think about it, as a child, they need more sleep, then they need less sleep until they become an early adult in their early 20s. Then they only really go into 8 hours sleep a night a need. And then also if you think about new mums, their sleep pattern gets thrown about and then they have to create a new one.
Basically.
Yeah, they have
we
none.
remember.
Exactly. But then when the children are young, then they have a different sleep cycle to when they might be teens again, that kind of thing. So I always say that sleep is not a set and forget. It's always changing. Midlife, it changes a lot because, yes, your biology is changing, but your life circumstances are probably also changing too. And they're also, again, like children, you might have elderly parents, and that's a whole new ball game in terms of how to manage that. And then also perhaps your children are leaving home and starting their own lives. So there's a lot of things that happen that can impact your sleep.
So we do tend to take all the stresses of life into sleep with us. Do we generally need less sleep the older we get?
No, not really. Not really. That's one of the myths. But older people tend to sleep less. But they might sleep less in one go, but they probably over a 24-hour period or a week period probably sleep the same as most other people.
It's the nana nap, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
So when we're looking at midlife specifically, does diet impact sleep for midlifers?
I think it does.
Mm-hmm.
I think it does. I think even if I think about my own experience, I have found with the food, I need to be more plant-based, a lot less red meat, and I also need to eat more during the day than I do in the evening. And I think that that's partly my body is slowing down in terms of what it processes, and sometimes it's processing too much and I can't sleep.
Right.
Um, so I think that that is true. I think also in midlife, the body is starting to show wear and tear of the life we've given it, basically. And so I think at midlife, that's when it all starts to come home in terms of those things, you know. Um, yeah. So yes, I think it is changing. I mean, menopause definitely is one of those things, but I think that there's so many other things that could be impacting it too.
Yeah. So let's look at menopause. How
Mm.
does it impact our sleep?
So the menopause. So this is really interesting. The menopause process we all know is the decrease in hormones, which are actually quite helpful in creating what we need to sleep well. So that we know from a biology perspective, but we can also think about the minerals that we have and that how we can supplement that. So maybe a broad spectrum vitamin B or a zinc product because you need zinc to create melatonin in the body and all those other things. So yeah, you'll be looking at um, how can you supplement what you can't create anymore.
Right.
The other thing that's interesting is that in midlife, if you've had a traumatic experience in life and you've had PTSD or you've been a victim of violence in any way, that can actually start to come home to roost in your midlife and stop you from sleeping.
Why is that?
Because it's at that time of life where I think the assumption is, or the body is ready to start processing stuff
Okay.
from your life. And so when you see it more in older people when they're in their 70s and 80s, they start talking about things that they wish they'd have done differently or behaved differently and so it's that reflection piece and I wonder whether at midlife that's when it's starting to happen too.
Right.
Mm.
So we know a lot with regard to in menopause the
Hmm.
temperature regulation issues
Yep.
and women waking up with night sweats,
Yep.
which can be massively incumbent on getting a good night's sleep.
Yep.
How do we manage that?
So there's a couple of things. It's 50-50 whether you wear pajamas or not,
Hmm.
whether that makes an impact or not. But what I would say is think about wearing natural fibers, 100% cotton, those kinds of things that allow your body to breathe and
Yeah.
look at your bedding for the same reasons. You can actually have a cool or tepid shower about an hour before you go to bed so that your body is starting to cool down before bed. And then also thinking about, what toxins have you had? Because your body is also trying to process those, which also makes you sweat. So looking at that, there are products on the market that you can get that can help regulate your bed. So for example, chili sleep is one where you set it to a temperature and it manages it for your side of the bed or the whole bed. And so that can be helpful for women who suffer from flushes as well. Or air
So
conditioning, that's the other.
will
Yeah.
that prevent the night sweats if you keep the space around you cooler?
It doesn't prevent it because the night sweats are coming from the inside out, but it helps manage what happens after that, whether you wake up in a pool of sweat or whether, you're not,
Yeah.
that kind of
Yeah.
thing. But really, if you think about it, it's really the body is expelling stuff from
Yes.
a thing. And yeah, and so the research tells us that plant-based diet, minimal alcohol, any other things that you might ingest that are not naturally consumed, those kinds of things will impact your night sweats.
So there are a lot of sort of common suggestions around about improving our sleep. What are the myths?
So I would say, look, excuse me, sleep hygiene is great. I think it's really good. It's a good first base. But I would say for most of the clients who come to me, they've done all those things. They've read all those things. They've tried them. And I think that the biggest myth is that you can pop down to the chemist and get some tablet that's a sleep elixir or something, and that will help you sleep. And similarly, if you go to your GP, and some people do have to do this, and I respect that, but it's not a long-term solution. Go in to get some sleeping tablets. Sometimes that helps, but it doesn't actually fix the problem, which doesn't go away if you don't attend to it. So taking a tablet to fix sleep, it's a short-term solution if it's a solution at all.
So how do those sleeping tablets work? So do they put you into a constant state of sleep, or do you still have those sleep cycles?
The sleep quality is not as good as if you were sleeping naturally. And so, you're sleeping better than if you didn't sleep.
Yeah.
But many clients who I've worked with, they feel really groggy when they wake up. They say it takes them an hour and a half to 2 hours to feel normal again. And so most people try not to take them.
Yeah.
Even though once they've started taking them. And then some people get hooked and believe that they need them in order to stay asleep.
So if you are looking for a short-term solution for sleep using sleeping tablets, what length of time is the sort of safe period to use them?
It's 2 weeks.
2 weeks, okay.
Yeah. But some people land on them for years.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
Yeah.
It becomes a crutch, doesn't it?
Yeah, it becomes the thing you think you need when in truth you don't. Yeah. So whenever you get sleeping tablets on script, I would encourage you to think about how you're going to get off them.
Yeah. So how do you get off them?
You decrease by half. So if you're taking a full tablet, you take half a tablet, and when you start getting good sleep on half a tablet, then you go down to a half of a half, which is a quarter, and then and then you go down to nothing.
Yeah.
And then it's just an emergency if you need it.
So you would do that over what period of time?
Everyone's different, but you could probably do that quite happily. I worked with a woman who'd been taking them for 20 to 30 years, and she came off them in about 6 months.
Goodness me.
Yeah, and she realized how her taking of tablets in the beginning she had a very valid reason for it, but she realized that she had connected with, I can't sleep without this white tablet.
I imagine that would be a really common thing. People
absolutely,
and then it becomes a crutch. You believe that you can't sleep unless you do these different rituals or you take this tablet or whatever it happens to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And so then it's unpacking and looking at, well, what does that actually mean? And then it turned out she grew up in a family where there was a tablet for everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was her tablet for sleep.
So that was her tablet for sleep. Yeah.
What about melatonin?
It's great. I am a big fan of it. Both my children have had it in their puberty years, and it's been really good for them. I would say to you that the quality of melatonin you're buying in the chemist is not the same as script melatonin, and so you probably want to get script melatonin if you're taking melatonin.
Right.
Yeah.
And how does it work? Why does it help you get to sleep?
Well, it floods the system with a slow release of melatonin, and you need a base level of melatonin to be able to fall asleep. So your melatonin amount starts building the moment you wake up. And so when it gets to a particular level, then you start to feel sleepy, drowsy, and then you want to go to bed. And so basically the tablet is doing the slow release of that melatonin that your body was unable to produce.
Is it is it that people don't produce enough melatonin, or is it that we're just short circuiting that process and bumping up the level?
Well, caffeine interrupts that process.
Okay.
So that's why they say don't have a coffee after 11 o'clock in the morning or 5 hours after waking, because you're interrupting the melatonin process. And then by the time you get to your sleep time, you might not have enough melatonin in your body to sleep. So that's really the thing. And also, like I said, you need minerals to be able to produce melatonin. So zinc is a big part of that. And a lot of people don't have enough zinc in their body on a daily basis because of their diet.
Right. Okay. So does melatonin helps you get to sleep, as I understand it, but it doesn't keep you asleep. Is that right?
No, not necessarily. Yes, that's right. And so, with insomnia, you can, there are three kinds really. Insomnia, where you can't go to sleep, you wake up in the middle of the night, or you wake up too early. Those are all forms of insomnia.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So what is the safe dose of melatonin? I'm a huge fan of melatonin. I've been taking it for years too, personally.
Yeah.
Full disclosure.
Well, you can't get hooked on it because it's natural.
That's what I've been told. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Sorry,
how much
what
can
was
you
that?
take? Sorry. How much melatonin can you take?
I would say follow the recommendations of your GP or what's on the box, but it's usually two milligrams. But I have been known to talk to psychiatrists and that who actually take 2 or 3 to get over jet lag.
Right. Okay. I've heard that you can take up to 10 milligrams.
It's possible. I mean, it depends on body weight and how long you want to sleep for and whether you're going to get woken up. Yeah.
True. And does that make you drowsy afterwards or not?
Not to the same extent. It might if you have a short sleep, but it's because it's natural, the body knows how to process it. And so if you give it enough time to be processed by the body, then you shouldn't have that kind of sleep tablet hangover that some people talk about when they have it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So what can we do? We've talked about the sort of things that the common myths that sort of don't really work. What can we do, particularly in midlife, to improve our sleep?
Well, the main one is to check that you're breathing through your nose, because many people, by the time they get to midlife, they have either had quite a few shocks or they have put on a lot of weight, and so they breathe through their mouth. And so that is not good because it's related to cognitive decline, but it also means that your blood vessels, when you breathe, are not getting enough oxygen and carbon dioxide around the body. So that's really important because nitric oxide is made in the nose. The other is hydration. So often I say to clients, have a hydrolyte with your dinner, because that way you definitely get all the things that you might not have got across the day if you haven't drank enough water, for example. And the other thing I would say is that try not to worry about getting enough sleep, because sometimes that is what keeps you awake.
Yes, I remember that personally. Like when I knew I had to wake up particularly early the next morning, I could never get to sleep because I was so worried about not getting up the next morning.
Absolutely. Yeah. So sometimes not worrying is actually the best thing you can do.
Yeah. And those the usual things that they tell us of, like, not to have screens by the bed, keep the temperature quite cool.
Yep. 19 degrees is apparently the ideal temperature in your room. You can also think about bedding that keeps warm during the cool and gets cool during the warm weather. So that is really important. Your body temperature is very important in terms of sleep. The other thing, sorry, I missed it. What did you say, Anita? I've forgotten that bit that you talked about.
What
body
things do
temperature.
we need to do?
Yeah. So the other things that we need to do is we need to make sure that where we're sleeping, we feel safe in. Because as we go through every sleep cycle, when we go into our deep sleep, we are actually going into a coma and we can't move. Right? And so from a genetic evolution perspective, we would have woken up checked that there was safety, and then got into the deep sleep, and then we knew that we weren't going to get eaten while we were sleeping.
Okay.
And so we still do that as humans. But if it's less than 3 minutes, we won't remember it.
Okay.
And often we wake up, and sometimes we will wake up and think, oh my God, I'm awake, something must be happening.
Yeah.
And maybe there is nothing happening. And so it's about, well, you're safe, don't worry about it, it's okay. So that's something to think about. The other is, make sleep an inviting place to be. Your bed, your bedding, all that kind of thing.
Yeah. What about snoring?
Snoring's not good.
No.
And
Not for the snorer and not for the other.
That's right.
If there's anyone around.
That's it. I think you need to have it looked at. And actually, people, a lot of people after midlife, particularly women, particularly postmenopausal, start snoring, start developing sleep apnea and restless legs. And so if you're snoring, it's a sign that something's not working. Snoring is not a sign of aging. It's actually not a sign of bad breathing. And so you need to have it looked at.
Is that linked to sleep apnea?
It can be, yes. Yeah. Or it can just be that you've got too much here in your sinuses and that, and you can't breathe freely.
Right.
But if you can't breathe through your nose, your mouth naturally opens. And if you start developing the habit of breathing through your mouth, your body isn't getting the oxygen and carbon dioxide, as I said earlier, but also you start setting up yourself for sleep apnea.
Right. Exactly what is sleep apnea?
Sleep apnea can be a number of different things. It can be obstructive, so it's not a free breathing from the mouth or the nose to the windpipe, rather. So there's the obstructive one. The other is that you breathe and then you stop breathing and then you start breathing again.
Okay.
And so that is related to the chemoreceptors in our brain that says if we have below a certain percentage, we need to keep breathing. And so when the chemoreceptor isn't working at the level that it needs to be, it will just stop breathing, and then that safety valve of get breathing again doesn't kick in. And so if you're sleeping next to somebody with that, they'll be breathing normally, and then all of a sudden they won't for, 20 seconds maybe even shorter. Yeah. And so
it sounds like it could be quite dangerous. It needs to be. Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of focus on sleep apnea at the moment. You go into the chemist and they've got their breathe kits everywhere, and it's quite common, I feel like now.
Yes. Yeah, it is quite common. I think it's also quite an easy fix, in the sense that people have to sleep with machines, or they can sleep with a dental piece of, what do you call it, a mouth guard that the dentist makes.
Yeah.
So it can be repaired, because also when you don't sleep well, you put on weight.
Yeah.
And you also put yourself at risk of diabetes and various other diseases. And so if we can fix or help with better sleep, then we hopefully stop all the other things that could come along as well.
Yeah. Because a good sleep is just at the crux of everything else that we do. I feel like, if we wake up, we're tired, we haven't slept properly, we don't make good food choices, we don't have the energy to exercise. So there are two positives straight out the window.
Exactly.
Whereas after a good night's sleep, we do have the energy to do those things and to make good decisions about what we do, and also just in work and life and everything else. So
absolutely, yeah.
As we all know, also, when we don't get enough, it is, we realize how crucial it is.
That's it. And also, the other thing that we haven't really talked about is how we manage our emotions.
Yes.
If you're not well slept, you're not nice to be around, and you can't deal with surprises or shock information or things that don't go your way. Your tolerance for stuff really goes out the window too.
Yeah.
And so, it affects everything.
So if you're trying to juggle kids and career and everything else going on, not getting enough sleep is just making that untenable. You can't keep going.
Yeah, you won't be super mum anytime soon. You
And,
know,
I think there's something everyone can relate to, regardless
yeah.
of how you're sleeping at the moment. We've all
Mm,
had those periods where we just, whether it's where, we've had young babies and,
yep.
you are waking up 2 or 3 times a night,
Mm,
at least, or whatever it happens to be, but we've all gone through
mm,
those periods of life where our sleep is severely impacted, and you
yep.
know what it's like to walk around in a fog.
Yeah. Absolutely. And, hopefully it's just a transition phase. But I had my first bout of insomnia at school, my last year of school. And then it came back when I had my first child.
Mm,
And it came back again when my husband passed away. So I often say to clients, the quality of your sleep is a function of the relationship you have with yourself,
yeah.
because it's really the barometer of what's really going on. If you don't have a clear mind, then it's going to be hard, it's going to be hard to sleep.
Like you said, there is that link of everything that
Yeah.
that what is going on in the rest of your life. You can't leave it at the bedroom door. It is
Mm-mm.
very related, and it will kind
Absolutely.
of rear its ugly head as soon as your
Yeah.
head hits the pillow. So
Yeah. Absolutely. Because that's when your brain is, the idea is that you're going to sleep so you're calm enough, so you've got space in your brain. And then all of a sudden, those thoughts you were trying to avoid, they've
yeah,
come to say, hello, I'm here now. There's space for me. Thank you.
yeah. Why do we all worry so much at night? I always find that it's times like
Yeah.
that where the worrisome thoughts come into play.
That's it. And that's because everything has settled. You know, people are in bed, people are fed, watched your favorite TV program, you feel ready for the day. Now it's time to go to bed, and actually you've got that space, the cognitive space, and then what happens is that all those things that you've been distracting yourself from
Mm,
or not wanting to deal with goes, oh, there's space for me now. Let's talk about it. And so when we think about worrying or anxiety, we think of it as an emotion that actually has a positive purpose. And it's when there's too much that it becomes unhelpful.
right.
So then the question is, well, what does this want for me right now? And often it wants you to remember something, or it wants you to do something, or it wants you to think about something. So I often say to clients, put a notebook beside your bed. And if you find that you've got all these thoughts coming into your mind as soon as you go to sleep, but they weren't there when you were sitting watching TV, just write them down and know that tomorrow you'll get to them.
Yeah.
And often that's enough.
I often do find that I actually do get good ideas just before I'm about to go to
Yeah,
sleep.
yeah,
And
that's it.
I do have a notebook and a pen by my bed, and I was scribbling. I
Great.
can't necessarily read it the next morning, but I do scribble it down there at night.
That doesn't matter. It's the act of taking it out of your mind
Exactly.
that's
Exactly.
important.
Or
Yeah.
if your phone is by your bed, which it probably shouldn't be,
Mm,
but if you do,
mm.
you can always leave yourself a voicemail. I found that quite helpful too.
Yeah, that's it. Or write a note. Yeah. No, that's great. They're good
Just to
strategies.
take it out of your
Yep.
mind so you actually can create that space to.
Yeah.
And what about
Yeah.
reading before sleep as well?
It's good, provided it doesn't wake you up. So you
Right.
see, when you're looking in that 90-minute window before you go to sleep, you're looking to do things that calm you down rather than wake you up. So you can read some books, like textbooks, that will make you fall asleep straight away, or really, because that's the nature of them. Or you can read the latest crime novel, and it will keep you up till 3 o'clock in the morning. So you just have
Yeah.
to choose what you're going to do.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
always that one more page, isn't it?
it is.
Oh, just
Just
to
one
the
more
end of the
chapter.
chapter. That's me. Just the end of the page.
That's
Two more
it. And
pages.
so music can be helpful. Classical music can be really good to do.
Okay. Is there a
Um,
certain beats per minute I was told that kind of lulls you into that sense of
mm,
relaxation?
there is a lot to be said for it, but really, it probably would be 6 beats per minute, because we're
Hmm.
only supposed to breathe that way as well, and that's the natural order of things as well. So you'll
Okay.
find if you go to the beach, it's a really calming space because the waves come at the same time, and actually your heart will then sync with the waves, and that's what makes it calming.
Oh, I
So
didn't know. That's so interesting.
yeah, yeah. So
Next time you go to the
ma
beach, everyone.
yeah, count it out.
That is so interesting.
So yeah, so it's really, I think if you look at it for 6 beats, that that should be quite good, because we say that we should only breathe once every 6 seconds as well. That's how we were designed.
That feels quite slow, doesn't it?
It feels very slow for the way that we're living. Yeah.
So, Martine, what are 3 takeaways that you can suggest to people that we can implement immediately?
Yeah, so I think I would say you can't shortchange yourself on exercise. So whether that's actually, going to the gym and doing a circuit, or whether it's doing a Pilates class or a yoga class or something, you need to move your body. You need to give your body that opportunity to do it. The other is find a structure of a day and a week that really works for you, because the body learns to trust consistency. So that's really important. And the other is, I would just say, if you're worrying about something, write it down and get to it in the morning. And, Hydrolyte, I'm a big fan of. So, well, there's 4. But yeah.
Fantastic. Yoga and Pilates, of course. I am an advocate and have a studio. So lots and lots of yoga and Pilates.
That's it. Any mind-body activities are really good for you to do. And if you find mindfulness doesn't work for you, do a different version of mindfulness, because yoga is moving mindfulness. And, there's lots of other ways that you can experience it. But definitely mind-body is great.
It's so essential.
Yeah,
Martine,
absolutely.
where can people connect with you?
So my website is sleepwell.club, and that's all about sleep. So you can connect with me there, or also on Instagram, Sleepwell Club.
Fantastic. Now, so there's going to be plenty of extra information on there, but what you shared with us today is so fascinating. Thank you so much, Martine. It was such a pleasure to chat to you.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you. And sweet dreams tonight, everyone.
Yes.
I'm certainly looking forward to a good night's sleep after all those tips and tricks. Thank you.
All right. You're welcome. Take care. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please like, share and subscribe so you can stay updated with more from Midlife Unraveled. To see more Midlife Unraveled, follow us at midlifeunraveled.com or at Midlife Unraveled on Facebook and Instagram. We'll see you soon.